I'm Matt Wilhelmi. I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And I'm really excited because I'm joined by Alison White. She is a fractional VP of Sales and Marketing with a really interesting background in food manufacturing, food packaging industries. She often acts as a trusted advisor to those CEOs that have sales leadership issues or sales leadership executives. And so, Alison, just thank you so much for your time today and talking to me.
Thank you, Matt. Happy to be here.
In our first episode together, we unpacked a case study, which was around a food manufacturing company, specifically a dessert manufacturing company based in Chicago. They've got about $10 million in revenue. They've got a number of different issues that they were dealing with, but the three that we kind of highlighted were the fact that their sales reps weren't getting really consistent repeat business. We also talked about how they have a lack of leadership on the sales side and how that might cause some accountability issues. And then the third issue we identified was kind of a lack of a process. And there's some other components to that. But in this episode 2 of our time together today, I wanted to spend a moment or two talking about some cautionary tales, because I think sometimes in business owners start to feel like that their issues are so unique that no one else could ever relate, and every other business looks like things are going great on the outside. And so what I've found is that that's not true. And so you know, being an executive now for a long time, I'm 20 plus years in sales and marketing leadership, have probably seen these issues come up before. And one of the cautionary tales that you told me about was the lost value of sales rep turnover. And so when those sales reps turn over, kind of what happens to that value? And so I'd love to hear more about that story. What happened?
Yeah, so this goes, back in time in my career when I joined a smaller company, and they had gained this new customer, big customer. One of their targets for a big customer that would add value in terms of not just revenue, but also provide a boost to the portfolio, gaining market share, and really putting their name on the map. The customer at the time, as I understood it, tested the product. The sales rep insisted that they were happy with the test results, even though it wasn't documented, or followed up on. So typically when you have a customer test a product, there's a process for documenting the test, making sure the results were documented and everybody's happy, have the customer sign off, and you're good to go. That didn't happen here. So during their initial orders, there was some confusion about the product itself. And again, the rep advised that they were handling it. Free product was sent to the customer, and life went on until one day they stopped ordering. And we didn't really realize it because the rep had left the company. And so when the rep left the company, there was no follow-up. And when we reached out to that customer after the rep left, the customer informed us that during the test phase, there were too many hiccups. And they felt that the rep did not really listen to them with regards to those hiccups. And so they didn't place any more orders. They just stopped ordering. And they had reached out to the rep, but of course the rep had left. So, so really lost value. And, it really talks to follow up, sales leadership, all of that comes into play here, because no one took the time to understand the pain points of the customer. And that's, it's very sad.
Yeah, I think about sales reps, unfortunately, from a lens of knowing that they're not going to stay with a company forever. I think that some sales leaders think that their sales reps are just never going to leave. They're going to be great forever. And while that might be true in some cases, my experience as a CFO of a number of different companies is that sales reps will leave often and for various reasons. And I don't mean to talk disparagingly about sales reps, but I do think that there is a very unique persona that it takes to be a sales rep. And so other people have used the word diva. I would never use that word. But I think that some sales reps, when they are really good at their job and they know their value and they can get paid more money somewhere else, they might leave. And so it's really important to that organization then that they stick to these really important processes, and you document conversations and you log your calls and you have a system for a lot of these tracking mechanisms. And so that actually reminds me of a story that I would love to share. It's a really quick one, but basically this organization did not have a software to track these types of things. They had a bunch of Excel files. And so, when a sales rep would leave, somebody would be tasked with going through their Excel file and then make phone calls. And so, as I'm sure you can imagine, that's just a painstakingly awful way of doing it. There isn't really good notes. You aren't able to track things. There's no accountability for these Excel files. And so it didn't go very well. And so, needless to say, revenue dipped quite a bit whenever sales reps would leave because nobody really knew if they were following up with these people or, kind of what was going on. And so it's really kind of unfortunate then when the sales reps do leave because you don't have a process in place. How are you supposed to follow up with people?
Yeah. I mean, that, and it also speaks to having kind of an accountability partner. I mean, I'm really big on accountability. I think that accountability in sales is extremely important. And again, that's where sales leadership comes in as well as having the right systems in place to track things like this. So if you have a CRM system in place where everyone in the organization has visibility, then these things don't happen to fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I think sales leadership, which is obviously your specialty, it takes a very different skill set to be an executive leader than the sales rep. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations make the mistake of promoting their number one salesperson to the VP of sales, and then wondering why things aren't working as well. But what they fail to maybe understand is that there's a difference in the skill set. When you're talking about a sales rep, you're talking about somebody who is engaging and charismatic and able to relate, but isn't maybe necessarily the best at prioritizing paperwork and follow through and kind of the administrative side of the job. But then when you get to be an executive, it's much more important to be focused on those administrative sides and the tracking and the paperwork. Now, I'm not saying the relationships aren't important as an executive. Maybe you can weigh in here, but I've seen this mistake made by way too many organizations.
Yeah, for sure, Matt. I mean, that's why systems are really important and processes are really important to kind of, negate this type of behavior. And sales reps, there are sales reps that are very passionate about selling. And there are sales reps that are very, they want to achieve higher. They want to do more and they build relationships and they're really, really good at it. It doesn't necessarily mean, like you said, that they're really good at being a leader. They're just really good at building those relationships. Some of the best salespeople I've worked with are the ones that bring those customers that stay. They have longevity. They build partnerships, almost friendships with some of these customers. And so it makes it harder for those customers to leave when they have that type of sales rep in their corner.
So, Alison, the next cautionary tale that you kind of told me about here is near and dear to my heart, because I've been fortunate enough to be a part of some organizations that have gone through a similar scenario. And what I mean is, when I'm brought into some organizations, they're very intentional about growth. They want to grow through acquisitions. They want to grow through just like, pouring, they got investor money or, whatever it might be, but they're intentional about growing. Maybe they're pivoting and they need a new strategy. But what they neglect is some of those long-standing relationships, the foundational revenue drivers that maybe help build their business. And so this next cautionary tale that you mentioned is, kind of taking these legacy accounts for granted. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. This was a beverage company. It was a brand. It was fairly new in the market. And this rep called on independent retailers in a specific territory to gain the shelf space in their refrigerators. And the brand of beverage was very unique and was quickly gaining popularity among the retailers that it was being sold to. So the sales rep was really excited by the initial success. And so they focused all of their efforts on acquiring new business, so new accounts, constantly going after new accounts to expand the brand reach. And that was the direction that was coming from management, build the account base, build the account base. And so there were marketing campaigns, there was promotions, there was distribution efforts put in place, all to attract more customers and increase the sales volume. However, during the acquisition stage, or the frenzy, as I called it, the rep really neglected the existing retailers that initially supported the brand, and orders were delayed. Customer service suffered to keep up with the growing demand, and so the once loyal retailers started to notice the decline in product consistency and service, and they felt undervalued and overlooked. So they eventually lost trust in the brand. And, despite the efforts to regain some of that business, the damage was already done. Because once you start under-servicing and undervaluing customers, they have a lot of options and they go.
Yeah, I think these customers, like, they understand the dating cycle a little bit. I kind of use that term appropriately. I feel like, when you're in sales, there's a little bit of dating that is, related to that. But when you stop calling them back and you stop, checking in with them, they go to somebody else who is calling on them. And it's not their fault. I mean, they don't know what happened to you. Maybe you stopped caring about them. But it reminds me of something I wrote in my book, and I just wanted to share it with you for a moment. I wrote this book, Taboo Business Questions: What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And honestly, it started as like a journal of issues and mistakes that I was watching entrepreneurs make that weren't fixing them. And so there's a lot of blind spots in here and other issues that business owners deal with. But this one is very, very obvious in a lot of organizations. And what I labeled it as was this term called revenue snobbery. And so revenue snobbery, in my mind, is basically the mindset that deliberately losing some revenue is a sustainable business model. Now, obviously, if you were to tell somebody that, they're going to say, well, it's not sustainable, but their actions maybe didn't quite line up yet. And they're acting that way. They're acting as if business is just going to go on and the organization will be fine. We don't, but like, you still have to do the things that made you successful in the past. And so it sounds like when we're talking about, these legacy accounts, if they get taken for granted, what's going to happen in the business? The foundation is going to fall apart and they're not going to succeed.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure you've probably seen that, as a sales leader, unfortunately happen, and then you're maybe scrambling to see, who's covering that, or, well, actually, you probably got a great strategy set up to cover that. So that probably never happened, but maybe heard about it happening at other places.
Oh, it happens. I mean, there's, the worst thing that can happen as a sales leader is you get a call from a customer that says, I haven't heard from so-and-so in, a month, and I have questions and I need some answers. It's the worst thing that can happen, because it's like, you then you're scrambling, what happened? Yeah.
I heard a story one time from a sales leader who told me that exact phone call happened while they were doing a performance review with that rep sitting right in front of them. Could you imagine what that would be like?
Yeah.
I guess you didn't have Martin off in your performance review. Well, Alison, thank you so much for those cautionary tales. I think it's really, kind of encouraging to hear some of the issues that maybe other organizations deal with. Even though, you're helping these billion-dollar brands and these really big businesses and organizations with their sales issues, these same issues permeate throughout other organizations as well. And so that doesn't make it okay to ignore, but it does hopefully give people a little bit of confidence to maybe raise their hand and say, hey, like I could actually use some help with some of these things. And, hopefully you'd be there to give them the answers. As we transition into our third episode here, I just wanted to remind our folks where we're at. So we just told some cautionary tales, and Alison's been nice enough to spend some time with me today, kind of unpacking this case study of this specialty dessert manufacturing company based in Chicago that had a couple of different issues. And so in our third episode, we're going to present some solutions. And so Alison gets a chance to kind of demonstrate, her executive leadership style and kind of how she would approach these different issues. And I think it's important just for a moment to kind of recap those issues before we move on. The first issue was that their sales reps were having a tough time getting some repeat business. And that is probably more common than we believe. But that was an issue that this organization had. They also had an issue with having, a dedicated leader. The CEO was playing the sales leadership role, but I don't think he was doing a great job at it. And I think you had touched on that as well. And so that means there's maybe not a lot of accountability. That was kind of that second issue. The third issue was a lack of a process. And when you have a lack of a process, sometimes that means that you're not going to have good forecasting. You're not going to build good relationships, and you're not going to have good software to kind of help with some of these different process things that are meant to kind of structure the sales process in a way that turns it into a system and something you can measure and track and improve. And so again, in our third episode, Alison, I'm really looking forward to continuing our time together and getting into some of these solutions for this specialty dessert manufacturing company. Looking forward to talking to you on the other side.
Great. You too, Matt. Thanks.